I'm going to be going over one player from each playoff team that I think is underrated going into your playoff pool. Starting out in the East, we have the Carolina Hurricanes. I picked Jesperi Kotkaniemi. He's on line 2 with Marty Niches, and he's on power play 2 with some pretty good offensive defensemen like Brady Shea and Shane Gostisbehere. Carolina's kind of been faltering down the stretch here, so it was kind of hard to find somebody, but he's got 3 goals, 3 assists in his last 6 games, so I like Kotkaniemi as a depth pick on Carolina. Next up in the Metropolitan Division, we have the New Jersey Devils. I picked Jesper Bratt. He is on a line with Jack Hughes, and he's on the power play with Jack Hughes. I just feel like even though he's had a really good season, he might be looked at as like the 5th option from a really good New Jersey Devils team where they have Dougie Hamilton, Timo Meier, Jack Hughes, and Nico Hischier who could all go before him. So if you want to get a lot of points, I definitely think Jesper Bratt is a good pick. Next up, I can't believe I'm saying this player is underrated, but on the New York Rangers, we have Patrick Kane. He's obviously had a little bit of a down year. He was kind of slow to start in Chicago. Hasn't done too much with the New York Rangers yet. But when I think of the best playoff performers of the 2010s, I think Patrick Kane is one of 2 names that come to mind. The other one being Sidney Crosby. So definitely look for him to turn it on in the playoffs. Moving on to the Atlantic, we have Tyler Bertuzzi from the Boston Bruins. His numbers may seem a little bit underwhelming when you first look at them, but he has 15 points in 20 games since joining the Bruins, including 9 points in his last 7 games. He's also on line 2 with Pasternak, and he's on the second power play unit, which could get a decent amount of time depending on if power play 1 struggles, because they have McAvoy, Orlov, Zaka, Hall, and Bertuzzi, so I wouldn't see why you wouldn't go to them as they're an insanely talented unit. So yeah, definitely take a look into Tyler Bertuzzi. Now for probably the least underrated player on this underrated players list is John Tavares. Obviously, he's had a great season. 36 goals and 80 points is nothing to scoff at. But when you think of the best Leafs players, he's probably 4th on your mind when going into your playoff pool, whereas I could see him realistically challenging for the most points on the team. So if you want to get a Leaf who's amazing a little bit later than one of the first few guys in Marner, Nylander, and Matthews, I would definitely wait for John Tavares. From the Tampa Bay Lightning, we have Alex Killorn. Obviously, he had an abysmal postseason last year with only 4 points in 23 games. But the previous year, when he actually was on the first power play unit instead of Andre Palat, he had 17 points in 19 games. Now that he's back on that unit, I think there's a really good chance that we see a bounce-back playoffs from Alex Killorn, and you can expect him to put up a lot more points. Next up, from the wildcard teams in the East, we have the New York Islanders. I feel like Brock Nelson is going to get all the attention right now as he's actually scoring goals at a decent clip. Bo Horvat, though, was having a great season in Vancouver, and since coming over to the New York Islanders, hasn't been doing that great. But I feel like he's been a good playoff performer in the past. If you look at 2020, in the actual 13 playoff games that they played, he had 8 goals, and he was a big reason why Vancouver had such a good run that year. So I would definitely look for Bo Horvat to be playing a lot better in the playoffs, as he's kind of built for the playoffs, just like the Islanders. The last team in the East, we have Sam Reinhart from the Florida Panthers. He started off really slow this year. He was a point per game last year, so the expectations were high. But he's been about a point per game since around game 30, even though his point totals obviously don't show it. So, yeah, I think he's probably the cheapest you can get somebody off that amazing top power play in Florida. Maybe Aaron Ekblad you can get a little bit cheaper in your draft, but Sam Reinhart's going to be discounted for sure after his slow start, so definitely look into him. Moving out west, we have the Colorado Avalanche. We have Valeri Nichushkin here. He's been amazing this year. He's on the second line right now, but he's still on the top power play with McKinnon, Rantanen, and Makar. Once Lehkonen comes back, there's a decent chance he gets bumped back up to that top line. So, yeah, I would definitely look into Nichushkin. He scored 9 goals in 20 games last year in the playoffs. So, he's definitely shown that he's able to produce on the big stage. So, I think there's a decent chance that he puts up a lot of points. Next up from the Dallas Stars, we have Rupe Hintz. Obviously, this guy's not an underrated player amongst avid fantasy players, but I feel like he's a guy who feels like he should be consistently over a point per game. So, and he's also on one of the top lines in the league. I feel like he doesn't get enough recognition for how good he is, and that top line's just too good. I could have went Jamie Benn here, but I think Rupe Hintz is going to have a great playoffs if Dallas can go far. From the Minnesota Wild, we have Matt Boldy. Ever since the Kaprizov injury, he's had 14 goals and 21 points in 16 games. This guy has shown that he can score with the best of them, and I feel like he's on that top power play with Kaprizov, and he's on that second line that's away from Kaprizov, but that could give him some weaker competition. So Matt Boldy should have a great playoffs. Moving on to the Pacific, we have the Vegas Golden Knights with Chandler Stevenson. He's been pretty underrated over the last couple of years. I feel like not a lot of people know about him outside of the fantasy world, and he's got like 65 points over the last 2 seasons each. So yeah, if you're looking for a good playmaker, he's on that top power play. He's on the third line, but I don't think that really matters in Vegas. So yeah, definitely check out Chandler Stevenson. Next up, we have Evan Bouchard. He was expected to take the reins on that top power play at the beginning of the season and have a breakout season, and he didn't really do that. But once Tyson Barrie left to Nashville, he's been back on that top power play and has been red hot. He's got 18 points his last 18 games. So if you're looking for a stock on that top Edmonton power play that's record-breaking this year, I feel like Evan Bouchard's your guy. He might not be looked at as one of those elite number 1 power play defensemen, but he is currently. So yeah, I definitely draft him up there with someone like an Adam Fox. From LA, my favorite team, we have Victor Arvidsson. He's got 6 goals in his last 10 games. He's on that top power play. He's on that second line, which we saw got to be a little bit more offensive than that top line against Edmonton last year. So even though he was injured during that postseason, I feel like we should see something similar from that second line, and obviously Victor Arvidsson is going to be a great addition to that. So I think there's a decent chance he puts up a good amount of goals if LA is to move on from the first round and beat the Edmonton Oilers. From the Seattle Kraken, we have Dylan Sprong. If you look at the numbers, he's actually got very similar production in terms of per game stats as Matty Beniers. And he's also on a line with Matty Beniers. And on that second power play unit, that's I feel like it's pretty decent. After Jared McCann, there's not too much going on in Seattle. But if you can get someone who is similar to Matty Beniers' production at a much lower name value, then I feel like that's a great option. Last but not least, we have the Winnipeg Jets. For this, I chose Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's on that top line, on that top power play. He started off the season really hot. He's kind of cooled down recently, but then again, so has everyone on the Winnipeg Jets besides maybe Josh Morrissey. So I feel like he's got roughly similar value to someone like a Mark Scheifele or Nikolai Ehlers for there's less name value, so you could probably get him at a discount. So yeah, I would probably go with Pierre-Luc Dubois over those guys since you can get them later in the draft. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if you guys have any other underrated players that you think I missed. I'm sure there's a lot of them because I did pick some more highly touted players who I think are just going to go a little bit later than people who are equally valued on their team. But yeah, if you guys liked the video, please like and subscribe. See you guys next time.